So, lately, every time I talk to anybody from the fitness industry, I ask them to name their top five of all time list of bodybuilders. Top five based on their, physiques. They don't have to be Mr. Olympia winners. They don't have to be any type of champions. But in your opinion, who is your top five of all time?
I have to answer that question, really.
Please, Kevin. I really,
I can give you
people,
my
people,
top
people want to know.
six. I can give you my
Okay,
top eight.
let's do top six.
Uh, and I want to go. It's all of these guys have something that
I know, of
I
course.
seriously look up to. You know, all of them, man. And I feel like I'll be doing like due process justice if I just don't include everybody that I feel that really had an opportunity to inspire me in my life. You know, I just can't pick five.
Oh
I
man,
really just can't even pick six, to be honest with you.
really? People want to hear your, can you give me top 10?
Oh, of course,
Oh, let's do top 10 from Kevin Levrone.
Arnold, Arnold Schwarzenegger, because of the way he opened up the sport of bodybuilding and the encyclopedia that he wrote for us to follow. You know,
Hmm.
nobody never done what he had done, and he inspired so many of us. Lee Haney, because of his posing and what he stood for as a human being and as a man and as a family man, and just such. Lee Haney was a man's man, 8-time Mr. Olympia. Nobody never done it like him. Dorian Yates, because Dorian Yates went against all odds, but what he had as far as genetics, he made the best out of it. Dorian Yates was like the shadow. He was this mystery about him. And I have to say about Dorian Yates because every time I saw Dorian Yates, there was this presence about him. He didn't talk. You never know what was going to happen. He showed up. He was just getting bigger and better. Never complained. Never said any one thing about anybody. But he's the guy that pushed me far beyond what I ever thought that I could do because he kept raising the bar. So he's the reason why the world probably knows who Kevin Levrone is because I chased so much and wanted to beat him. I got second to him my first Mr. Olympia. Lee Labrada, because it's phenomenal posing, his presentations, the way that Lee Labrada would stand back in a lineup at a full flex for an hour, hour and a half, 2 hours. And he always was so very, very consistent. You got Sean Ray, who, very, very young age, he was one of the youngest bodybuilders that came in at that young. Just the way that on posed, he took that fluential pose into another level, um, and presented himself on a level as just this business guy that had everything together, and he was a voice for what he believed in, and he always stood true to that, and he stands true to that today. And Sean Ray really inspired me. I wanted to be like him, in so many different ways. And he taught and he showed me how to make money in this industry. Ronnie Coleman, because I saw Ronnie Coleman develop, and I remember talking to Ronnie. Ronnie would never even place in the Mr. Olympia. You have to understand that all these people had such an impact in my life, and because of them, I am here today. And I just saw Ronnie Coleman's his relentless work ethic, not quitting and not giving up, and how his body changed. And I would see Ronnie, on tours, catching trains because he couldn't afford to fly through Europe. He would catch trains, him and Vicky, and he would show up and get dead last. And he did this 3, 4 years straight. And I say, why do you keep doing it? He says, because I love bodybuilding. So I seen someone here to the top, and he became one of the greatest Mr. Olympias ever, as far as his stature and what he stood for. And he's a guy who never complained to this day. You see the inside of Ronnie Coleman, and what made him a true lion, a true champion, is because he doesn't complain, he doesn't give up. And you might see him walking around like that, you say, what pushes this man? You know, that's the lion. That's that relentless drive that he has as a human being. And that's what's beautiful about Ronnie Coleman. And that's what made him so great. Not everybody can do that. Um, Flex Wheeler, passion, loving, caring, greatest genetics ever. Um, he's the type of person, human being that I learned from for just watching. He was just so passionate and so hard on himself. And I would say, why are you so hard on yourself? It doesn't make sense to me. Because he said, Kevin, because I'm disappointed, you know? So he was an athlete who, one of my favorites of all time because of his presentation and just the way he brought it to stage. Flex Wheeler's the athlete. He couldn't even. It's like this guy didn't even have to be 100% in shape because his body was so flawless. He could show up 80% and still beat us. So when I think about things like this and the crossfires and everything of just the whole sport, if it wasn't for people like those guys coming before me, or even where I was and seeing all these things happening, I wouldn't be here. And then you could talk about Dexter Jackson. I sit back and I think about him right now and what he's doing right now. It's unbelievable. Dexter is showing us that this is a healthy sport, you know, and far beyond age, it's still existing. How does that happen? You know, it's not because of steroids. So his dedication, his passion, it's just something that it just doesn't make sense. That's a gift from God that he has. And when I see him do this, and I've seen him grown, and it's just a beautiful thing to be involved in an industry where there's so many different things going on around you, right? That you just say, thank God that I'm able to suck it up. And you got Chris Cormier, you know, passionate, very, very passionate individual. And I'm learning that Chris Cormier, his brain and his thoughts and what he has to offer long beyond his bodybuilding. He might have been his greatest enemy on stage, but look what he's doing now, the passion that he has and giving to people. So it's just so much, man. I look at Kai Green, you know, and what he's doing and where he came from, and he's just always propelling forward to bring out that inner being of that human being down inside of him that need to be expressed. And it's beautiful to see that he's found a space in a sport that can allow him to do that, to create his process and his inner pain outwardly, right? Phil Heath, I mean, you talk about Phil Heath, you talk about somebody that's just a beautiful thing to see and a sight to see, you know? And Phil Heath is it's almost this gifted mystery about him because it's just there, you know, like the sun waking up in the morning when it shines. It's just a beautiful sight to see. So that's the history of our sport.
That's a great
Um,
list of. That's a great list of names.
yeah, you know, every one of every those human beings that I've mentioned, you know, there's a certain room inside of my brain where they'll be remembered for all eternity, you know. And hey, you know what? I can't forget about my boy Jay Cutler,
Oh yeah, that's
you
another.
know, who I remember Jay. Like, you got to think, man. I remember Jay and I watched Jay grow. And I remember Jay, and I remember there's a picture of me leaning down over top of Jay when he's on his back. You might have saw it. He's on his back, and I'm leaning over top of him. It almost looks like, you know, I'm just leaning over top of him, but I'm giving him this pep talk, and I'm saying, listen, you can do this. You have to understand. And he's like, do you think I can do it? He's like, but you guys are my heroes. I don't want to go out there, you know, and go up against my heroes. I mean, I said, listen, forget about your heroes. Go out there and take the show. I said, you can bring Ronnie down, Jay. Go do it. You know, and he had on his mind to where he was just so concerned about not wanting to offend us. And these are his heroes who he's going against. And I said, listen, forget the heroes. You know, you got to go out here and take this. This is what you're called to do, bro. You got to go out. And I remember giving Jay that pep talk just like that, and watching him and seeing him and watching him become develop into from that young man into grabbing that opportunity and taking it and flying with it to becoming a role model to so many people around the world. But you know, he was someone who I felt at the time was, you know, kind of like doubting himself, you know, um, in the midst of the battle. But he took that sword up and he went out there and did what he had to do, and he proved to himself. And Jay never doubted himself ever since then. You know, he took it, came 4-time Mr. Olympia, and God bless him. You know, so when I think about all these things, Dragon Slayer, Rich Gaspari, just first guy ever on stage that had ripped glutes. You know, I mean, it's just on and on and on, man. So those are all the greatest, and all the greatest will always be all the greatest. You know, I just can't single out a top five. So